Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch and welcome back to my snowy studio. Today we're gonna paint white anemone bouquet, which is very wintry bouquet, very wintry flowers, and I love to paint white flowers. It's a bit tricky, you need to get hang of it, but it's also very beautiful result. So let's start. I'm taking this lovely bouquet of white anemones as a reference, and we will paint around a lot of greenery, a lot of extra flowers. So let's start. The trick with white color is that it's actually not white. And to get a nice shades of white color, I suggest to take ultramarine blue, mix it with cadmium orange, and you already see that it's turning into nice grayish color, but we have to keep in mind that it should be very super light, super diluted, and it's always handy to have a piece of paper. Yes, here it is, a piece of paper. And before you start to actually paint, you try it out. That looks too dark. So we need to dilute our mix more and more until it will be slightly noticeable, about like this. And also you could vary the temperature of your color and the hues of your color with adding a drop of either orange that turn the mixture into warm shade, or a drop of ultramarine blue, which will turn it into more cold mix. But everything should be very diluted. When you paint white flowers, it's better to start too light than too dark. But let's enough of talking. Let's paint. Finally, let's paint. So I bathe my brush into this grayish mix, and I would like to set my first flower in intersection of 1/3 and 1/3 of a piece of paper, because we are painting according to rule of thirds. And I put my brush in about 30 degrees to the paper. It will be the flower middle. And I press on my brush, on my whole brush. I press on the body of the brush, on all the brush, and I paint the first petal. And it feels like I would like to make it a little bit warmer, so I add a hint of cadmium orange and paint the second petal. The central area of anemones, it's rather thick, and it will be covered later on with black petals. So it doesn't matter what's happening in the middle right now, but we need to take care of beautiful petals around. And I like to paint petals with the whole body of the brush, because it creates some unevenness, some white spots which add to the volume, that add light sparkles. So never be afraid to leave just white paper. White paper is crucially important to make your bouquet, your flowers really crispy, really bright. So always try to paint a little bit lighter than a little bit darker. It's also nice to mix different shades of white. For example, this petal a little bit colder, and let's paint one more. In principle, you see, I'm just doing brush strokes. And I set brush strokes shaping the anemone flower. anemone, it has that structure that petals are overlapping one each other, and they're relatively flat. You can't see floral vines around, and that's why I'm painting just with the whole body of the brush. If I add a little bit darker stroke right here, it will definitely show that this petal is underneath that one. And that's how we create this layered texture. Let's add few more petals. For example, a slightly darker right here in between these two. Also, I always leave some white areas. And also you probably could see why it's very important to start very light. Could you hear the sound? It's madness outside. It's suddenly very high. It's very snowy outside, and I can't do anything, guys. I'm so sorry for this. So, nevertheless, we keep painting and creating layers. I will leave this flower to dry a bit, and I will paint another anemone, which will look a little bit up. Just like this. I bring petals with the whole body of the brush, and I bring it down to the middle, to the center of the flower, from top to bottom, from top to bottom. The more uneven and random brush strokes you have, the more interesting your flower gets. So one, two, let's paint a group of flowers around. For example, a little bit smaller flower will be right underneath this group. So I want to dilute a little bit our grayish mixture, and I bring all the petals, which is basically brush strokes, I just bring them to the center. And sometimes I paint with the tip of the brush, sometimes I paint with the whole body of the brush. Later on I will check out, maybe I will add few more flowers around, but right now it's a little bit difficult to get the composition. So what we need now to add more details, and then after that we will build up things around. So right now I would recommend to add one more layer of petals. This flower is dry, and I just paint few petals on the top, and it would be nice if you paint them a little bit overlapping. No need to make the mix darker. You just use the same mix, but because we paint layer on the top of the other layer, it will be enough to create this volume of the flower. Now, while this area is drying, I prepare a black color for the middle. I'm just taking neutral tint. You could take any of black colors which you have, and I want to mix it with burnt sienna, just a hint of burnt sienna for a more interesting shade of black. And I think this area is a little bit wet, but let's try. Usually anemone has this very certain black middle. So I just paint few brush strokes and I let the dark watercolor goes into watery parts and I just observe. I'm not trying to add details at this very moment. What I would like to do is to add a few strokes to the other flowers. I always leave some white space, some white paper, because that makes your watercolor airy, and black color is kind of complex one. If you use it too much, it would be too flat and too dark. So for now, I'm just leaving everything like it is, and I'm switching to the greenery. For greenery, I take phthalo green, which looks very super bright and very unnatural for a greenery, and I mix it with a hint of ultramarine blue to make it colder, and with a little bit of sepia. Now it's too brownish, so I keep mixing with phthalo green until I'm happy with the color. And I always can check it on a piece of paper. For example, that looks almost great. Maybe a little bit of ultramarine blue. Yeah, yes, this is nice. This one I like. Anemones, they have very special texture. Let's paint it. I paint again, I just arrange brush strokes. I move my brush very quick. I press the brush to the paper and I move it a little bit and lift it up. Let's paint another leaf. I press my brush on the paper and I quickly lift it up. You could move your wrist around, press and remove, press and remove. And it's nice if you manage to create slightly different shades of greenery from your palette. So all your leaves are a little bit different. There will be a stem and some greenery around. Don't afraid to create something, you know, maybe not natural or something a little bit not realistic, because we are painting in loose style, and what's important is to bring the idea. Let's add more of greenery around, like this. Also, to make white flowers really pop up, we need to add contrast, and we get our contrast with the help of our greenery leaf. So whenever you see it's too much of white, add a nice piece of greenery around. I want to make a little bit different shades of green, a little bit more bold, slightly less bold, about this. And as we paint in a bouquet, I will show you the prototype. It has different kind of leaves, kind of greenery. So right now I want to paint, it might be eucalyptus or with long leaves or something else. But I really would like to paint these long green leaves. And everything that makes white color to pop up. How to paint leaves. You put your brush on the tip of your brush, press a little bit, create the curve, and then release the pressure. One more time, let me find a nice spot for it. For example, here. Your brush on the tip of the brush, paint a small tiny line, then press a little bit to the belly of the brush, create the curve, and then release the pressure. You could paint it in the different direction, from the tip of the leaf and bringing it back to the middle. What I like to paint now, I would like to add very light, very diluted, maybe a little bit more brownish leaves. Just like this, even more brownish. I like when the greenery around has different shades, just like this. It's more painting with brush strokes than painting very detailed leaves. Right now, I would like to add small, tiny little details into this bouquet. So I first paint some small, tiny branches, random, very random. I wash my brush. I create slightly more brownish mixture, and with the tip of the brush, I create these filling flowers, filling greenery, which usually florists add to their bouquets to make the bouquet, to add volume to the bouquet and randomness. And again, it's all about brush strokes. I just set up small little brush strokes with the tip of the brush in different directions. I add different shades of brown, and I vary the pressure and the direction of the brush strokes. Try to avoid being too symmetrical. The more move around, the better. It's also handy to have two brushes to paint. For example, I'm taking the smaller brush and I want to create the similar branch of filling flowers on the top. I just paint few random strokes around and add a little bit of these brownish small little leaves, about this, and a little bit here. It's nice to vary the intensity of the color, so you could take for example, burnt sienna right from the palette and paint a very contrast small branch with very dark colors. It's just to be not very big one, because the main elements are our white flowers, and all around is just to create, is just to support these white flowers. So it's nice to bring contrast, but not overdo it. And right now I would like us to be back to the floral centers. I wash my brush, I come back to my dark color, It's just neutral tint with a drop of burnt sienna. And I'm painting the middle of anemone. And now I take a smaller brush and I paint the stamens. I think I told something wrong in the beginning, but that's stamens. And the specific of anemones had just a lot, and all the stamens are rounded are around this big center, and they have these fluffy edges, pollens. And of course we are not painting each and every of them, we just create the filling and the volume. I suggest you to take your brush more close to the hairy part, because that brings more control, and paint random, very sharp strokes, and decorate every this line with small brush stroke on the top, just like this. And that's actually a good time to stop with this flower, not overdo it. Let's do that again. Let's add a little bit darkness to the central part, and with the tip of the brush, with very quick and sharp moves, you create the pollens, you paint the pollens around about this, and with tipping moves you decorate it. Add these details, these tiny little details. You could always add a little bit more of the strokes. It also nice, you probably could see that I'm trying to arrange all the strokes in some direction, so it feels like they move with the wind or with something into one direction. That creates a nice feeling of the composition. I think this is very, very lovely. I would not do more, but what I would like to do is a little bit emphasize this flower. So I wash my brush. I take this very pale diluted greenish brownish thing. I add few shades to the flower. I think it could be a little more diluted, just like this. Adding some more contrast to the petals. And I would like to add a little bit more of dark details. You're right now at this moment, at this stage, you're just checking out your painting and see where it's not enough of contrast, and then you add small details around. It's also nice to paint something overlapping, for example, extra greenery and extra greenery here. You remember how we painted this? It's just brush strokes when you take your brush very quick from the paper. And what's brilliant with painting bouquets instead of just single flowers, that you could really practice a lot different brush strokes. And if you are not happy with something, you could correct or paint a little bit over. And while painting a bouquet, you're practicing long lines, fine lines, special brush strokes. So a lot of things you're practicing, and you're building up a nice composition, a nice bouquet. About this, I'm looking through the camera. I always advise for you as well to look at your painting through the camera and see what else could be done. I think as a last touching point, I would like to add few random dark brown details around. Just like this. Maybe small tiny details like vines to the long leaves, so they're not looking too like a big piece of color. And I'm taking our diluted gray texture and divide some petals, just adding a second layer to some petals, and we're done. Thank you so much for painting with me, for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the process, and I would really like to know which flower you might like to paint next. Share your results, tag me on Instagram olga.koelsch, and I'm happy to share. I'm looking forward to see your wonderful pictures. See you next time. Bye bye.